No matter what we think about Kate, whether we like her, we think Kate is smart, whatever we think about Kate, the only thing we can say objectively for sure is that her demonstrated level of emotional intelligence was average or poor. If you haven't seen the previous videos, then you need to go back through those. We're talking about emotional labor, its demands, and how proper execution of emotional labor through high emotional intelligence is really the prime service quality differentiator. It goes to quality, it goes to reliability, and it is the value behind the increase in price for those who can command a premium price. Now, we're going to examine why people struggle to command a premium price, why they struggle to display their bargaining power at the point of sale. And we're going to go through an actual call, a live sales call, where we're going to hear what a funeral director typically does. This call represents the heartland of cases. It could be any funeral director in any city because this is 99% what happens in this situation. And what happens in this situation 99% of the time is far from compassion, which commands the high price. And it's even below the level of empathy. It's really at the level of sympathetic responses. And I'm going to break that down. I'm going to show you the average way that these calls are being handled is completely backwards and anti-profitable to what you really want. So we're going to go through that call and then we're going to start to dissect it and break it down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Monarch and Moreau, and this channel is dedicated to funeral professionals who, although they don't have the lowest price, they wouldn't mind making the most money. So now as we go through this call, I want you to keep top in mind those things I've been talking about. The need for emotional labor, right? Its toll, its residual effect, and then maybe the dissonance by combining the caregiver role with commercial interest. Just keep that top in mind as we go through this real call. Now, there's some things we should recap first because I want you to have these things top of mind as we go through this call. No matter how distinct your value proposition is, it won't command a high price if you can't deliver that value proposition powerfully and persuasively at the point of sale. If you can't sell where the rubber meets the road at the bargaining table.
Donna, can I help you?
I was calling to get a price on a cremation.
Can I put you on hold and get a funeral director for you?
Yeah, please.
1 moment, please.
Let's take a timeout. Let me ask you two things, owners, managers, funeral directors, right, whose income and paycheck is dependent to this to some extent, right? When the call comes in, we can sell at a competitive price, right? We could sell at a discount. We could upsell at a premium price, or we could just lose the sale. Isn't that right? But if we're struggling reconciling two contradictory issues, commercial interests and caregiving, then we might develop something called cognitive dissonance. And no matter what the care goals are, the business objectives are clear. We have to be profitable. If we're going to have an advantage, we have to command a high price. So when the funeral director gets on the phone, she needs to close the sale and she needs to sell at a high price, despite the fact that she operates in a business where all services look nearly identical on paper and all funeral directors sound the same. This is the toughest sales job. We're talking about having the type of emotional intelligence where we can execute expert emotional labor and succeed even though it's coming at someone else's demise. And we have to care now for the person who is most bereaved by that demise. And it's the toughest job in sales, but this is where we have to differentiate ourselves. This is where we have to command our premium price. All things that we need to do are about to happen right here where the rubber meets the road at the point of sale, at the bargaining table.
Thank you for holding. My name's Kate. How can I help you?
We looked on your website. We couldn't find what your prices were. We're just really trying to find the right spot for us.
On our website, under the Services tab, there's going to be a space for cremation packages. So all the prices are listed there.
Okay, I looked on there. I couldn't find it. I was looking. It says 6 steps, cremation, traditional. Do I just got to click one of these?
Yeah. So if you're just looking for just like a basic cremation where we're not handling any services for the individual, that's either direct or basic. And if money is a concern with cost, I would go with basic cremation. That cost is $2,495. So that's going to include everything necessary for the cremation to take place. It does not include one of the urns. It doesn't include like newspaper obituaries, just the cremation. So
okay.
To bring your family member into our care, the cremation on site at our crematory, getting death certificates for the family and Social Security notification. The only additional outside of the $24.95 would be the cost for county death certificates that the person passed away, and that depends on how many copies the family wants to order.
Okay, so you're kind of like a little bit on the higher end of our quotes. Is there any like way you guys can work with us if we wanted to work with you?
That is our cost when it comes to payment. Unfortunately, we can't discount it any. Unfortunately,
How come?
that's just because that's our cost for the basic cremation.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Help me. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at this right, because we got a quote from someone else for I don't know, $19.95, and it seems like we're getting the same thing that you're offering. But if we're not, we want to know.
Not necessarily. I mean, if you were quoted a less expensive cost, that could have come from a cremation society, where that's all they do is cremation. But a lot of funeral homes, because they have the overhead of the funeral home staff, you're also using an on-site. That's where the additional cost comes from. That's why we're going to be a little bit more expensive than a cremation society.
Would the real difference then maybe in that price be you might have just higher overhead than they do? You have a nicer facility?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly right. Because of the overhead of having a funeral home, having an on-site crematory, that's why we're going to be a little bit more expensive.
Okay. All right. You might be a little bit outside of our price. You know what I mean? Anybody can quote us a price, I guess, whether it ends up being the actual price. But, just to be real with you, we might not be able to afford that.
I completely understand that 100%. I'm absolutely, offended. I want you and your family to do what you're most comfortable with, and I don't want you to go outside of your price range where you're not comfortable. So I want you to do what you guys are going to be comfortable for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. You're very welcome. I'm so sorry for your loss.
No matter what we think about Kate, whether we like her, we think Kate is smart, whatever we think about Kate. So I don't know how smart she is, right? But I do know this. That was a poor level of emotional intelligence. And if the grieving process is going to be safeguarded, if that conversation is going to take place at all, it's going to happen right here at the point of sale at the bargaining table. The only thing we can say objectively for sure is that her demonstrated level of emotional intelligence was average or poor. Maybe it's a lack of training. Maybe it's a lack of emotional labor management and just emotional resilience and conditioning. And like I said, when these things clash, right, when you've got that role conflict, you're a caregiver, but now you've got to meet this commercial interest, this sales quota, you've got that conflict, you're worn down, close to burnout, you're going to default to whatever aligns more with your moral compass, the path of least pain. So you'll become hyper caregiver, apathetic seller. And then think back to our underachieving average professional, then our sales superstar. Who's going to get in there and fight for you? Who's going to get in there, do the rebuttals, resolve the concerns? Who's going to get in there and ask for the close 3, 4, 5 times? Who's going to get in there and start an anchor high? Who's going to go in there and either lowball, discount, or even ask for the sale at all? Probably the person who's going to depersonalize, right? That's a defense mechanism at this point. They're so close to just being burnt out, and the pressure to sell is some individuals are just going to emotionally detach altogether. They're going to become completely apathetic towards your brand, towards selling, and they're going to start even coming to work less. When the call comes in, I can sell at a competitive price. I can discount the price to try to get the sale. I can try to upsell, sell at a premium price, or I can just lose the sale. But if I can answer these questions right here and make the most important sale, the sale to myself, that I can have that power at the bargaining table. So I don't know how smart she is, right? But I do know this. It's not going to win the sale. It's not going to command a high price. That was a poor level of emotional intelligence. It is undermining the value proposition at the point of sale at the bargaining table. Sales is a service. In fact, it's the major component of most services, and it's the only place where the grieving process can be protected through informed decision making. Wouldn't the funeral professional who helps a family make an informed decision that prevents future regrets be worth a little bit more money than the one who doesn't do that? Do you see the average way that these calls are being handled is completely backwards and anti-profitable to what you really want?
Donna, can I help you?
I was calling to get a price on a cremation.
Can I put you on hold and get a funeral director for you?
Yeah, please.
1 moment, please.
So what's our first thought here? Well, the first thought is that the front desk associate misses a critical opportunity to build an emotional connection. And more specifically, rather than acknowledging the sensitivity of the situation, the front desk associate immediately offers to transfer the call. This might feel like procedural coldness, not compassion, and it doesn't sell the next step. It doesn't position the funeral director in the next stage of the sales process. So what could we say instead? Maybe at the most basic level, we might acknowledge the loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me get you connected with someone who can walk you through all your options and answer any questions you might have. Would that be okay? Now, here's an even better way to respond. You would say, absolutely, I can help you with that. In fact, that's why so many people call us, because we have so many options, really one to fit every family's situation. But before I can be sure how to best help you, I must ask, has a death occurred? See, if we do it something like like this, right? We're going to establish empathy. We're going to create a compassionate foundation for the call, and we're going to get emotional engagement started even before we make the transfer.
Thank you for holding. My name is Kate. How can I help you?
We looked on your website. We couldn't find what your prices were. We're just really trying to find the right spot for us.
Sure. On our website, under the service tab, there's going to be a space for cremation packages, so all the prices are listed
Now,
there.
when I hear this, the first thing I think of is sales apathy. So just imagine that you're the one responsible for driving calls to this location. You either pay the bill or you do the work. And you get this analysis of the performance here, and you realize that this was a very procedural, dismissive way of directing the client back to the website from which they just came. So we're kind of pushing them away. And rather than engage the emotional language where the prospects, commented on the right spot for us, we're kind of retreating again behind the website, behind our marketing materials, really apathetic, even antithetical to selling. And so this is that emotional dissonance that I talk about, and it's really the suppression of empathy in favor of professionalism. But professionalism and empathy are not the same thing, and empathy and compassion are not the same thing, just like sympathy and empathy are not the same thing, and they produce different results. So instead of what Kate said, we might say, Mr. Customer, I'm sorry you had trouble finding the information on our site. Let me walk you through the options just to ensure we're even a good fit for your family. When you're looking at terms of care and services, what do you see happening? Or we could say, I'm sorry for that inconvenience. Let me walk you through the option. Can you tell me more about what you're envisioning for the service? Are there any specific needs or wishes you have? You might say something like, I appreciate you checking out our website first. I'm here to help. May I ask, when you said that you were looking for the right spot for us, can you tell me more about what that means to you and your family right now?
Okay, I looked on there. I couldn't find it. I was looking. It says 6 steps: cremation, traditional. Do I just got to click one of these?
Yeah, so if you're just looking for just like a basic cremation where we're not handling any services for the individual, that's either direct or basic. And, if money is a concern with cost, I would go with basic cremation. That costs is $2,495. So that's going to include everything necessary for the cremation to take place.
Again, this is an objective analysis of the amount of emotional intelligence that was brought to bear on this work-related task, this necessary component of delivering care during the sales process, and we're evaluating what was actually said. So what jumps off the page is the unqualified price quote first and foremost, right? It's an anchored low. It assumes that the prospect is going to make their decision on price because they've raised a price concern. But we don't know that. We also don't know that price is the only missing component to what they need to make an informed decision. So the combination of unqualified price quote and the assumptions mean that there was no clarification. There's no understanding of the prospect's real needs. There was no qualification. This isn't a display of empathy. This is at best sympathy, but it's definitely apathy toward the sale.
It does not include one of the urns. It doesn't include newspaper obituaries, just the cremation. So to bring your family member into our care, the cremation on site at our crematory, getting death certificates for the family, and Social Security notification. The only additional outside of the $24.95 would be the cost for county death certificates that the person passed away, and that depends on how many copies the family wants to order.
Objectively, this interaction lacks emotional intelligence, right? It focuses only on the cost, it lists services kind of mechanically, and it really misses the opportunity to engage and connect emotionally and passionately, right? When we dive into pricing, we don't know the drivers for the particular prospect, and then we talk about what's not included, we kind of come across as maybe we're nickel and diming the caller without even really explaining the value or the importance of those additional things that we're letting them know are left out of what they're trying to buy. Some better responses, a little bit higher emotional intelligence, right? We could say, Mr. Prospect, I apologize for any confusion. I can explain those options for you. Before I do, could you please share with me what's most important for you and your family during this time? So, Mr. Prospect, our basic cremation package ensures a respectful and dignified process, and it covers all the core essential services that you need. But we also have additional offerings like urns and obituaries, which can be customized to your preference. How does that sound? Mr. Customer, the basic cremation takes care of the essential procedures. We do have additional options like specialized urns and obituary services that families sometimes choose to include. May I ask how you envision commemorating your loved one? I understand this can be overwhelming. Let me walk you through what the basic cremation service is. The basic cremation service includes everything necessary for a dignified process. It covers all the core services. But if I were to ask you, kind of aside from that, what's the most important thing to you right now when honoring your loved one?
Okay, so you're kind of like a little bit on the higher end of our quotes. Is there any way you guys can work with us if we wanted to work with you?
That is our cost. Unfortunately, we can't discount it any. Unfortunately,
how come?
That's just because that's our cost for the basic cremation.
Okay, so I'm just curious. Help me. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at this right because we got a quote from someone else for like I don't know, like 1995, and it seems like we're getting the same thing that you're offering. But if we're not, like we want to.
So if we're trying to avoid genuine emotional connection, we're not going to try to emotionally engage. So we're going to substitute empathy and compassion for professionalism and etiquette, which are not the same things. They're assumed postures of the real thing, real empathy, real compassion. And it shows up in our language pattern. And that's reflected in the language patterns of this funeral director. So what we commonly observe in cases like this is that a funeral director is going to provide a very technical answer about overhead costs, but they're going to miss the chance to highlight emotional and qualitative value, and they're just not going to emphasize what separates their funeral home from the competitor because they just don't know. They don't have the inner wherewithal of self-soul to express that, right? And so it's a missed opportunity to shift the focus from price to the benefits of peace of mind, from calculation to conviction.
Really, I mean, if you reported a less expensive cost, that could have come from like a cremation society where that's all they do is cremation. But a lot of funeral homes, because they have the overhead of the funeral home staff, you're also using an on-site. That's where the additional cost comes from. That's why we're going to be a little bit more expensive than like a cremation society. Because of the overhead of having a funeral home, having the on-site crematory, that's why we're going to be a little bit more expensive.
Now, if you want to bring some more emotional intelligence to the situation than maybe what you heard in the phone call, here's some ideas. Mr. Customer, I appreciate you being candid. Every provider has its unique strength. One thing that families value with us is the peace of mind of knowing that everything is handled with the utmost care and respect right here on site at our on-site crematory. Can you share what factors, apart from price, are important to you? You might say, Mr. Customer, I understand that this just seems like a simple price comparison. But what sets us apart is our care and dedication that we provide families during such a difficult time. Our team is here to make the process easier for you and ensure that everything is handled with dignity and respect. Does that level of care resonate with you? Remember, what separates us is the quality of our emotional labor. That's the prime differentiator. And that's determined by the quality or the level of emotional intelligence that we can deploy on any situation. And that comes back to how well we're managing our emotional labor. If it's run down, it's not in a position, it's not in a state where it can deliver or even produce high levels of emotional intelligence. There's going to be dissonance there. So to demonstrate that.
Okay. All right, you might be a little bit outside of our price. You know what I mean? Like anybody can quote us a price, I guess, whether it ends up being the actual price. But just to be real with you, we might not be able to afford that.
I completely understand that 100%. I'm absolutely offended. I want you and your family to do what you're most comfortable with, and I don't want you to go outside of your price range where you're not comfortable. So I want you to do what you guys are going to be comfortable with.
If you think this funeral director did well, understand this is a textbook sympathetic response. It's textbook sales apathy. We need to emphasize the compassionate value that our care provides, not just the logistical details. Sympathy is our relief. It's not the relief of the family. Sympathy says, I can see you got a problem, you can't afford it, and I'm sure glad it's not my problem.
Sure, you're very welcome. I'm so sorry for your loss. Just let us know if we can help in any way, okay?
Thank you.
I'm sure glad it's not my problem. So it looks like empathy, but it's really just disguised professionalism, right? Which is a substitute for real, genuine empathy. It's pretextual empathy, and it leads to sales apathy because it creates dissonance. And even though you acknowledge the caller's concerns, you provide no solution, and you don't even try to provide a solution. This is a clear sign of mismanagement of emotional labor. This funeral director, despite her cheerful demeanor, is highly sympathetic, highly apathetic, and displaying extreme signs of dissonance.
I completely understand that 100%. I'm absolutely offended. I want you and your family to do what you're most comfortable with, and I don't want you to go outside of your price range where you're not comfortable. So I want you to do what you guys are going to be comfortable with.
I mean, you just passively accept the objection without offering any resistance, any alternative solutions, and not asking for the sale. That's not empathy. That's sympathy and sales apathy. Text and listen, I get it. It looks like empathy, right, on the surface, but it actually reflects a lack of genuine compassion or engagement. They don't explore any options for potential solutions. They don't offer or attempt to offer any value beyond the price. The statement, do what you're comfortable paying for, lacks any personalization at all. It doesn't invite further discussion, offer to explore options such as maybe a flexible payment plan, maybe an alternative package, or some other option that still safeguards the grieving process. But there's no discussion about the emotional benefits or even why you should think about the emotional benefits, not just the cost. Sales apathy is a sign of emotional dissonance where someone's going through the motions of displaying empathy but is really detached from the deeper compassionate interaction that could truly address the client's concerns and make an authentic, genuine connection.
Okay, sure. You're very welcome. I'm just so sorry for your loss. Please let us know if we can help in any way, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's an exchange of poorly managed emotional labor on display, right? Because when we're not in the right state, we can't execute at a high level. We can't display high levels of emotional intelligence when we're suffering from emotional fatigue. And it also shows the very high cost of providing and delivering emotional labor. Now, why do we need talk tracks? We need them so that we can be sold, right? We need that inner wherewithal of self-sold, or none of this stuff is going to matter. We're not going to engage the client authentically if we're suffering from dissonance. So understanding and learning how to articulate powerfully and persuasively the value behind our prices is key to setting us free. Taking the brakes off and unlocking your power at the bargaining table, at the point of sale where the rubber meets the road. So do you believe that we're somewhere in the spectrum from peak performance and high job satisfaction and then burnout on the other end of the spectrum, and our performance might be impacted on which side of the spectrum we're closer to?
Sure, you're very welcome. I'm just so sorry for your loss. Please let us know if we can help in any way, okay?
And the conversation has deflated. There's no attempt to re-engage or to offer any alternative solution. Now, a skilled sales professional not suffering from dissonance would take this opportunity to ask at least one more open-ended question, right? Follow up one more time. Ask for the sale even one time. Ensure the prospect feels supported even after the call.
Sure, you're very welcome. I'm just so sorry for your loss. Please let us know if we can help in any way, okay?
So we might say instead, Mr. Customer, I completely understand your concerns. What if we could make this more manageable for you while still ensuring a dignified service? Would that be okay? Or we might say, I genuinely understand, Mr. Customer, it's essential for us that families find a solution that they're comfortable with. Can I offer some alternative solutions or payment options that might make this a lot easier to manage all the way around? Even the best value propositions, well positioned by the best marketing, will be undermined at the point of sale at the bargaining table if your agents can't persuasively bring to life the difference that they make. If they can't do that, there's going to be dissonance at the table and reduced bargaining power, and it's going to show up in discounted prices. This cognitive dissonance is going to create stress, anxiety, even depression in you and your staff. This statement right here, rather than validate the value proposition, undermines it and validates the prospect's price concern. Rather than validate the price concern, we could offer to resolve it and validate our value proposition by compassionately offering an alternative that helps the prospect get the best care and safeguard their grieving process. So we might say something like, I genuinely understand. It's essential for us that we find a solution for you that you're comfortable with. What if I offered some alternative solutions or payment methods that might make this a lot easier to manage all the way around? Remember, sales is about moving the dialogue forward, continuing the dialogue, competing for the sale, getting in there with effort, with genuine connection. But we're not going to do that if we've got emotional dissonance. And as you see, Kate doesn't ask for the sale even one time. The call ends on a polite but hollow note. There's a lot of sympathy being expressed, but no real connection. So just tattoo this one phrase on your heart. Have it ready so you can play off it. You can, amalgamate it to your needs and say, Mr. Customer, I completely understand your concerns. But what if we could make this more manageable for you while still ensuring the dignified service that you really want? Would you be opposed to exploring that option? Now, I know from experience when a lot of people hear this call, which really represents the average call, people think it's a good call. But we've seen numerous examples of just poor emotional intelligence, right? Poor dialogue, sales apathy, and a genuine lack of empathy, let alone compassion.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Right? And although the funeral director is technically answering the caller's questions, there's really no evidence of any compassion-driven sales activity, which is what you need to have power at the bargaining table where the rubber meets the road at the point of sale and command premium prices. You're not going to do that when your agents at the table have dissonance. So I don't want to pick on her anymore because that represents the everybody funeral director. Just make some price shopping calls yourself and it'll be revealed to you. Cognitive dissonance is going to create stress, anxiety, even depression in you and your staff. If your staff is feeling like that, are they telling you? Now, what you need to do is go to my blog and get all the PDFs, all the download, all the training material that goes with this video so that you can start to work through some of these issues and maybe do some self-assessment, do some training on this so you don't have this issue. All you got to do is click the link and get to the blog. It's really easy. unless you're too apathetic to make the effort. Prepare you better than anyone in the industry.